Yeah, g'day everyone. Welcome to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. We are here to break down everything we just saw in round 17 of the NRL season. Eels make first half history. Warriors humiliate the Dragons. And of course, you guys know I had to throw this one in. My Titans spring a big upset. I got a big smile on my face, Winnie. Mate, let's go to you. How are you feeling? How are you feeling after the round?
Yeah, not as good as you, mate, because 2 of your 3 headlines were at the demise of my best bets. So only a 1-2 record on the best bets. Not all doom and gloom, I suppose. Getting a couple games wrong, but still getting out of there with a winning mixed matchup. That was Dolphins, who, as you said, were at the hands of that historic first half by Para. Still getting enough junk points in the second half, thankfully. I did stay at the game and was able to cheer in some tries that were kind of meaningless, but meaningful to me because I knew we needed a few on the board. The Dolphins getting 20 was just enough to actually stay in front of your Titans. Not that you would have minded at all today, mate, but 18 points in an upset win was all you needed. And I thought they should have had a handshake agreement before the game, win against Ben Hunt for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, that could have honestly been the game. They could have said, forget footy. Let's just play for the Ben Hunt stakes and gone through the old, I don't know, some of the primary school games, the hacky sack race, balance the egg on the spoon, that sort of stuff. Because I mean, it was the Ben Hunt race, and we got it up. We got there. But yeah, I had a pretty good week. I think I tipped about 5 out of 7. But let's jump into it. Let's jump straight into it. Dragons v Warriors kicked us off Friday night. Warriors got up 48-18, a huge win in the end. And of course, because of that huge win, I went with Dallin Watene-Zelezniak as my MVP. First winger to score 4 tries and have 5 line breaks in the same game this year. Remarkable performance there. And I got to admit, Winnie, when I was looking at this one, I said, how big of a factor is the Jack DeBellin 200th milestone game? Post-recording, I realized, hold on, not one Dragons executive showed up to Ben Hunt's 300th dinner that his own friends and family traveled across Australia for. So then I realized, well, the Dragons don't do milestones well at all. So I went straight keen as on the Warriors. And, they're absolutely firing right now. I'm definitely ready to lock them in as a final side this year, which is exciting for Warriors fans because they haven't been there for a while. Meanwhile, for Dragons, I don't know where they go from here. But what I do know is it is season over for them. There's nothing to salvage here at all, in my opinion. But how did you see this one?
Yeah, it does sound like Ben Hunt's played his last game. And the fact that he was likely to back up, didn't play great Origin minutes in Origin. I kind of said on Wednesday or Thursday for our preview, I felt that line had moved too far to take New Zealand, but we congratulated anyone that got on for the early line. And I'm kind of guilty of not getting this game right as well because I did make a same game multi, and the same game multi had either team 1-12, where I felt like Dragons at home, both off a bye, like this could be a competitive game. And look, there's probably some comments, and we appreciate your comments coming through about how poor the Dragons were. But I thought this was more about how great New Zealand was. I really think they backed up that, road victory against the Canberra Raiders a couple of weeks ago by bringing the show on the road yet again. And I've underestimated the Warriors again here. And I think looking at them on paper and what you actually see out on the field are 2 different things because this is such a connected team. They make the opponent work so hard to score and to find opportunities to score. And the key moment in this game was, I believe, when the Warriors actually reduced to 12 men in the second half and the Dragons had an opportunity to come back and the Warriors were still able to score. Pretty sure it was Watene-Zelezniak because he had 4. So one of his 4 while they were down a man. And when I talk about them being connected and just clicking, that's in attack as well. Like just the timing is perfect, hitting the ball at speed, and they're playing above the sum of the parts, which is what makes the job that Andrew Webster's doing so impressive. And, I really need to reevaluate the Warriors again. I know New Zealand fans in the chat are going to start to be saying things like top 4 based on what they've seen. And I couldn't tell them they're wrong about their team. They should be really excited.
And for what it's worth, Charnze-Nicoll-Klokstad post-game made the point that as a team, we're just loving spending time together. We view these road trips to Australia as bonding time and time with the boys, which was really, really awesome. And, people will look at this game and go, oh, it's just the Dragons. But the facts are, Winnie, not everyone is beating the Dragons by 30 points at Wynn Stadium, where they'd actually won, I think, 5 of their last 6 and have a great record. So you've got to give respect to the Warriors in this one. We opened up Super Saturday with the Dolphins v Eels at Sunshine Coast Stadium. Eels walked away 48-20 point winners. My MVP was Mitch Moses backing up from Origin. He just seemed to have his hand in everything there. And I know you were at this one live, and it would have been a tough watch as a Dolphins fan because you think Braden McGrady, their young winger on debut, scored in the North Devils grand final team and actually broke his arm or dislocated it badly, scoring a match-winning try in the last seconds. So I was keen on him, keen on his debut. Outside of that first try, though, there was really no joy at all. They salvaged something in the second half, winning 16-6, but at that stage, it wasn't really a positive. It was kind of just like well, at least it's for the mixed matchup, I suppose, for TryPod followers. But how's this? Without Dylan Brown, the Eels are averaging 38 points per game. And I just can't believe that because I thought they would really, really struggle without him. And it's one of the big reasons I've tipped against them for most of those wins. And they've upset me there. But for the Dolphins, they only missed 2 more tackles than the Eels, which has shocked me as well. But it was their 41% possession and their shocking completion rate of 63% that just zapped their energy. Just too much energy in defense, Winnie. But you were at the ground, so how did you see it live from the stadium?
Yeah, just felt that the Dolphins probably could have won this game if not for just a lapse in concentration. The Dolphins are up 4-0, and then they just had a lapse in concentration, conceded 42 straight points, and then they won the game 16-6. If you just take out the period where they let in 42 straight, they win this game. To be honest, man, I think I've only been to 2 Dolphins games this year, and both of them I threatened to leave at halftime. And obviously the other one, I'm glad I didn't. But I was shocked, mate. Like, when you see a performance like that, you start to think, what were they doing in the bye week? Do they realize the week is over? Did they take it easy? That they did no training, no contact. They come out and forgot how. I thought it was really ugly. Like, you get the first try again to remind we're on a best bet +8. Not like one try, whatever. It's a good start. But what was really alarming to me was how soft the Eels tries were. Like, I actually get it when you've let 3 in a row and you're a bit shell-shocked, or you've had no ball for 20 straight minutes and then fatigue sets in, you let in a soft try. But the tries were soft from the outset. The Eels were bowling over and just running straight through the Dolphins. Like, even at 12-4, like, the Eels put a kick in behind, it just went dead. And I was so relieved because I had no faith at all that the Dolphins could hold Para out. And they couldn't. And it was like a training run. And at one stage, I lost track of how many tries there were. Right? I think it was a try to Gutho. That was probably about Para's 5th try of the half, if not the 6th try of the half. And then obviously the Dolphins kick off. And then I took my eyes to the big screen, and I genuinely thought I was watching a replay of the try that had just been scored. Then it clicked in my mind, no, the big screen was live, and the Eels scored the identical try, other than when they did a draw and pass, they passed right instead of left. But they broke the line the identical way. So this Dolphins side was horrendous. It was really disappointing. And it is funny how teams can still score 20 in a game where they're nowhere near it, and how valuable that was. There's the difference between winning or losing. Luckily, getting a couple of breakaway tries, if you're gonna clutch at straws and say, didn't give up second half. But Eels have been guilty of not completely, destroying sides once they've had a lead, just coasting. And the last point about Para, 5 in a row, right? And who would have thought the team could look better since losing Dylan Brown? Not me. So that's my mistake. And lose a best bet, silver lining, still get out of it with a mixed matchup win.
Yeah, the silver lining in this one's certainly the mixed matchup. I know the tries you're referencing. It was the Will Pennicini ones where he just kept bumping and they just broke through. Like it was like,
and Hopgood.
It felt like you were watching the same thing on repeat, like you said. For what it's worth, I built out a little multi before, plus 12.5 Dolphins and McGrady anytime try scorer. So I was feeling quietly confident after the first 4 minutes that I got a nice lead here. But I guess, look, when you lose by 28 points, in the words of Tim Sheens, Adam Reynolds was the difference. Was the difference in this one. We'll run with that, just like Tim Sheens tried to. Then we moved to the Panthers and Knights. The Panthers got up 20-12. Went with Tyrone Peachey. Probably didn't expect him to be MVP in this one, but he was pretty good. 2 tries of his own and a try assist. For me, a tale of 2 coins. Heads, how excellent the Panthers are. And tails, sorry, Knights fans, forgive me. I know I'm a Titans fan. This is Rich. How rubbish you guys are. I mean, Come on, really, really poor. The only positive takeaway from this one is if you got the plus 10.5, we kind of both hinted at in the preview show, and you would have got home with that. But look, it's a stark reminder when the Panthers, who are missing 6 of their regular players, beat a near full strength Knights side. And yes, the Knights are still capable of scraping into the top 8 this year, but with performances like this, it's not looking pretty. And I actually didn't think the Panthers played very well in this one, which is maybe why I'm being a little too critical of the Knights, some might think. But I spoke in our preview show. I said the Knights have blown 4 games this year by 4 points or less. And really, this one, they didn't blow by 4 points or less, but you add it to the list of piles of games they should have won. And now we're at 5 games they should have won. And that's 10 competition points, which means they are well and truly could be a top 4 side with maybe some coaching adjustments, maybe a player or two adjusted. They're not quite there, the Knights, but there are some positives across their season, of course, I'm talking. But yeah, for me, this season is, if they are to go on a miss finals, Winnie, they're going to look back at those 5 games now and think, if we just won 2 or 3, what could have been? But how did you see this one? Because I think this is one you were close to a best bet, was it, on the Knights, but not quite there.
How'd the Knights lose? Did the Knights lose? Penrith had nobody.
Our camera.
Some people will get the inside joke there. Yeah, I hope we're not recording. Look, that wasn't completely true. Penrith didn't have nobody. Like, they still had players like Dylan Edwards, who I thought had a whale of a game and outplayed his counterpart, Kalen Ponga. And let's talk about the victors first. So they were at home. They made the bold decision to rest all the Origin players. We discussed the potential that, 1 or 2 could get withheld. And I said it doesn't have to be all or nothing. But Ivan Cleary came out afterwards and said, it's not even about the physical, it's the mental break. And people don't realize the mental toll it's taken, especially, after a game where the series was decided. So he's made that decision. And we did foreshadow that, talking about how Penrith makes decisions based on how they're going to play their best footy in September and October, not what gives them, a better chance to win a round 17 game, and a game that they have the faith they can win anyway. But once you had all those players out, which is why we said if you like Newcastle, take them at the time, the line was only going to go one way, and it did crunch into 4.5. What annoys me is, and I think it was last year, but if it wasn't, it was the year before, or if not the last couple of years, it's been a similar scenario with half the Penrith sides being up, playing Origin, is I remember taking the Knights 15 plus 15.5, 16.5 against Penrith after an Origin game and saying it just makes a lot of sense for Penrith to rest everyone. They didn't rest anyone. They came out and eviscerated them. So I think I was a little bit, gun shy here, because we talked about those Penrith Origin players all being Blues, wanting to prove a point when they did step on the field next for their club, and how there was a potential for the big win. Of course, once you hear they're all being sat out, then you wish you had that 10.5. And it is funny how this played out too, because the game ended with multiple Panthers sets on the Knights line, and you would have got that heartbreaker try by Penrith. Had Penrith cracked the Knights right at the end, you actually wouldn't have covered the line. But in the end, the final margin means that if you got in early, you won. And then if you took the start with Newcastle closer to kickoff, once you knew the players were out, you unfortunately don't get the chocolates. I mean, I was super impressed by Penrith. I thought they knew they were a bit undermanned, so everybody was really fired up and dialed in. And, the players that were there, your Leotas, your Vicious Fish, and I mentioned Edwards, I thought they were outstanding. Peachy's a funny one, isn't he? Like, his career's revitalized. I don't know if there's another club in the NRL he'd be starting for, but he's found his way back home to Penrith. And then because Tungo's out, he's found his way into the team, and then he's making things happen. And I know he had a couple of tries last night. I mean, pretty fortuitous try, the one they got off, returning that short dropout by the Knights. But that's a little bit of luck you make in a tight game. I thought this was tight throughout, both high completion rates. And what can you say about Newcastle? It's a very similar story to a week ago against the Roosters, where the opponent didn't have too much talent for them. In fact, you could argue they were much closer to full strength. They had a real opportunity, but it's just yet another, close game that they failed to win. So you said if they miss the 8, I mean, they're going to miss the 8 for sure. But in a different, parallel universe, somewhere else out there in the multiverse, maybe with a smarter coach. I don't know. The Knights are winning these games. They should be able to win, and they probably are top 4, but they're far cry from it in our reality.
Yeah, and there was rumours today that Michael Maguire, the board actually thinks he would be a great coach, and Paul McGregor is the other one. So it's kind of, this reminds me of Anthony Griffin vibes last year, where the Dragons kind of knew he wasn't their long-term coach, and they're just waiting to pull the trigger. I think Adam O'Brien is entering that territory, especially with his post-match comments where he said, "I'm not sure to what to put this down to. It feels like every time we fix one thing, something else goes astray." So if the coach isn't really quite sure what's going on, the writing's on the wall for me. At least probably not the best comments to be making. But then we move on to the Storm.
Speaking of comments, Dan Lever, who is a Knights tragic, says Freddie would be a better coach. So it's dire straits when people are saying things like that this week.
Oh, there'd be some interesting picks if Freddie was coach, that's for sure. But following that game was the Storm.
Phoenix Crossland, left center.
Yeah, Kalen Pronger prop. And the Storm did beat the Seagulls 24-6. I went with Jerome Hughes for my MVP in that one. And I believe I tipped Storm 13 plus here. I can't remember exactly what my comments were in the pregame, but I was certainly on the Storm here, and I was confident they'd get the jobs done. And then I look at that first half, and I started to think, oh my God, I don't know what I've tipped here. This is the Melbourne Storm have not turned up. I don't know. Did they all get on the beers to celebrate Origin? Because we know Melbourne is kind of like Queensland's 5th team. But they get into the sheds and they got a rocket, or something changed drastically in that second half. It could have been a rocket from Bellamy. Very likely it was a rocket from Bellamy. And their second half wasn't exceptional, but it was clinical enough against a Manly side that was always going to struggle, missing the Trbojevic brothers, of course. And for Manly, I mean, I look at their game. They only had the one try at the minute 13. I just think without Jake in the middle to really, suck those middle defenders in and give Cherry some time at the back, nothing really happened. And then the big elephant in the room, no Tom Trbojevic. There just wasn't any spark in attack. To Ruben Garrick's credit, he got through a ton of work. He just doesn't have that X factor like Tom does. And that's not an insult, because Tom's a Dally M medalist at his best. For the Storm, 11 errors and 40 missed tackles, but they still win by 18 points. There's not a lot of teams in this competition, Winnie, that are going to have 11 errors and 40 missed tackles and win by a 13-plus margin. There just isn't. And so, as I always go back to, you just cannot underestimate the Melbourne Storm under any circumstances. Unfortunately, Justin Olam, no try. I was pretty confident he would cross in his return against Manly, but that wasn't to be. So anyone who got on that tip, my apologies there. Olam had a great game. Unfortunately, just didn't cross the stripe for us. Coates, the man outside him, crossed for 2. But how did you see this one?
Yeah, I saw it similarly to Ryan in the comments. He said he felt like Manly were going to win the first half. So I know what you mean about being nervous. Definitely not feeling confident, in Melbourne 13 plus. Key personnel news before this game, of course, was DCE did back up for Manly, while Munster had a case, I think Bellamy called it Caxtonitis. So he sat out, so at that point, the line was 12.5 on Wednesday, but then there was no Munster. In fact, the line actually stayed the same, which wouldn't really make sense, because obviously the Storm are not as good without Munster. But I think what happened is everybody was on Melbourne. Like, everybody backed Melbourne 13 plus. So when Munster was out, that kind of counteracted just the fact that all the money was still behind the home team. And you wouldn't have felt confident, because I looked at it and went, this is why I didn't lay the chalk or agree with the 13 plus, because Manly still just got maybe enough to be competitive, and they look to be every bit in this game. And, everyone's just staring at Jerome Hughes trying to make it happen. But as I also spoke about the Manly shortcomings, when the game turns, when momentum turns, when it gets tough, you don't know who's going to put their hand up for this Seagull side, and nobody really did. And so in the second half, the game got away from them, and they could never, wrest it back. And it was partly, some of their own fault and own doing. You mentioned Melbourne started the games with lots of missed tackles and errors, but it was Manly that ended it that way.
Yeah, and Manly have some, I won't say soul-searching, but a lot of things to figure out, in my opinion, just because Anthony Seibold has shown that he's a good coach, but he's not quite a great coach at this point of his career. Had the first great year there with South Sydney Rabbitohs, but certainly there's still question marks over this Manly side and if they can get to their potential under Anthony Seibold. Didn't have the laptop on charge.
You got me there. Yep. And I started flashing the battery, so I didn't want to lose it.
This isn't our first podcast together. Let's move on to Super Sunday. And I'm sure no one else is more excited than me to recap this one. But the Titans, we snap a 4-game losing streak against our quote-unquote big brother. We went 18-12. Had to go Dave Fafita for my MVP. I see he's copping a lot of criticism online for his acting or stuff around that disallowed Broncos try. But, what Dave can control, he's not in the bunker. He can only control what he does on the field. And, he scored that crucial try before halftime and then set up another. And look, as a Titans fan, I'd love to just, give plenty of banter and go off here and give it to Broncos fans. But just to be realistic, we were the better side today, but you guys stunk. That was the worst Broncos performance they've put in all year, without a doubt, in my mind. And we were kind of lucky in that regard, to be completely honest. I don't think the Broncos will play like that again. I think it was their third loss at Suncorp. So interestingly enough, they do have a better record away from their home stadium this year.
Yeah, they lost that game to the Raiders. And trying to think, what was the other game the Broncos blew at home? Someone will tell us in the comments. For some reason, it's not coming to me. But anyway, keep sharing your thoughts. Oh, the floor is yours for this game, mate.
Oh, mate. But yeah, it was, for us, it's just such an important win. If we lose this game, we're sitting in 9th, but we've had all 3 of our buys. So as a Titans fan, I knew we just had to win this game. We absolutely had to. For the Broncos, I'm not concerned with this loss for them, but I will caveat it. This isn't quite the point. It was a little bit afterwards, but certainly post-Origin last year was when they really started to fall off a cliff. And they will be desperate to make sure that doesn't repeat itself. To be clear, I don't think it will repeat itself, but potentially there are some question marks there. They need to be careful at the very least. But yeah, as a Titans fan, when he just absolutely thrilled to get this win, it was honestly hard to put into words at full time how happy I was. I was over the moon, and I still am, to be honest. It was a beautiful win. Anytime you beat the Broncos as a Titans fan, it's we're not their biggest rival, but certainly they are our biggest rival, and it does mean a lot to Titans fans. But unfortunately for our best bet, and I'm sure you weren't as thrilled watching this one, but what did you make of this game?
So thanks for the comments, guys. Panthers did get the better of Brisbane. That was a Thursday night game. Brisbane might have 1 or 2 out, and Penrith come in full strength. And then South Sydney pumped them as well. I brought up the score, so I'm not acting like I can remember every score off the top of my head. But I think that was the game we had a best bet as well, where Souths came in, and pumped the Broncos. I do recall that. That was either a Thursday or a Friday night as well. So it's funny that I've actually lost a few at Suncorp. So then when you lost the game 32-6, like Brisbane did to Souths, maybe this wasn't Brisbane's worst performance of the season. And for Broncos fans and people who backed Brisbane today, let us know, did you think you were overly hard done by the refs? Because Clarkey did refer to that disallowed try. That's a tough one. I haven't really seen too many like that where the obstruction, happens a couple of passes infield from the line break.
Yeah, I thought it was the wrong call.
The bunker said that it has not affected the integrity of the defensive line, but then when they drew and passed the fullback back on the inside, said that Fafita was contacted and wouldn't have been able to chase back. And you look at it, he wouldn't have got there, but you can't, necessarily make that call. So it's just a funny one that it would never be picked up live, and maybe a harsh call, because if Brisbane gets that try, they could easily have mounted their comeback from there. The other, Seth says Clarkey paid the ref. So Clarkey does have a lot of influence in the game for sure. Look, the other one was probably the Titans making a break right before halftime, and Khan Pereira, goes for the kick and it hits Walsh, and to call that played at and give the Titans that set, which ultimately Fafita does score from. But, this game was 0-0 for a long while. Not what you're expecting on a sunny afternoon. Perfect, beautiful conditions on a rare, Brisbane Sunday home game with a 40,000 plus crowd, because it's school holidays as well. Lots of families out to see exciting footy, and they didn't get it. But the Broncos had held the Titans scoreless for 39 minutes. Okay, you get a 50-50 call that goes against you. They couldn't challenge it because whether a player played at a ball is like a subjective call. You still can defend that. You got one set to defend before halftime, and Brisbane was unable to. As you said, Fafita crossed. And we've talked a lot this year about really critical, tries coming in that last set before halftime, and how that, changes the mood and energy going into the break. So that was vital for you. But I thought what was great for your Titans, Clarkie, is you weren't leading either. So you didn't have a lead at halftime to think about. You did get a lead early in the second half, though, getting your nose in front. And, one observation, it's like Billy Slater can do no wrong. Every string he pulled was perfect for Queensland. And another one was not picking Selwyn Cobbo, even though he was actually medically cleared to play this weekend, because Billy, he was not 100%. And, when I look a bit closer at two of the Titans' tries, one is just Cobbo getting burned down the Titans' left wing by Pereira, and the other one a result of a line break that was mind-blowing, because there were 5 defenders that could have tackled Kelly, and for some reason Cobbo jammed in as well, and then let Pereira make the break, which led to the try I discussed. So, if you want to look at like how Brisbane lost, they couldn't handle your man there, who's got about the best strike rate for any winger in the comp. And in attack, just looking clunky. Everyone backed up. We should mention as well, someone who didn't was your captain, Tino, which was curious because they just said he was being rested, which makes no sense to me. It's like your biggest remaining game of the year. Like, even if you are just resting him, at least say he's got a tight calf. Say something. It sounds so bad. You might not make the finals. And imagine if you'd lost this game by 2 points. You think our captain didn't play. Like, all's well that ends well, because you got the win anyway, and that's great. And it shows, you got a footy team there on the Gold Coast. You can go to Brisbane, you can go there without your captain, and you can win. And maybe it gives Ben Hunt some food for thought. Although all the reports this weekend you can confirm is that it's just going to be a matter of compensation. He's going to be joining Brisbane perhaps this week. I don't know who could have predicted that or who could have said that. And I didn't get a tip off or anything. That was just my inkling of how the situation would play out. So I did try to tell you guys. And I know people jumped on Brisbane, the premiership markets and stuff, which if Ben Hunt gets secured, then, you're going to be happy with that. But it's an unfortunate timing to get on Brisbane after that disappointing result. Now, the Titans, credit to them for actually hanging on. Once again, we had a team that sacked their coach that ends up actually pulling the upset win. I can see we might have a connection issue, and I don't know which end it is, and I'm hoping that I'm coming through all right. But I got you. You put a bow on how you saw this game, because tumultuous week for the club. But I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you've got to sack your coach every week.
Well, Jimmy Lenihan actually becomes our first ever interim coach to win his first game. So stoked with that. When Tino was ruled out, I saw we were at $4 odds, which was tempting, but I thought without Tino, it's probably a bridge too far. Now it looks like a masterstroke. We've rested our captain and got a win against the side that's in the top 4, which is absolutely brilliant for us. And for what it's worth, with your comments regarding Cobbo, I've got to agree. Xavier Coates is my game 3 winger for the Maroons, absolutely, in my mind. Then we move to the Rabbitohs v Cowboys. Cowboys win 31-6. If anyone heard my comments in the preview, you'll know why I'm shying away from the camera right now. But Drinkwater was my MVP. He had 3 try assists. And of course, this was a game where we were split. I said Rabbitohs 13+. So if you subtract the 13+ I need, and you give your Cowboys the +8.5 you had, I was only wrong by about 40 margin. So an embarrassing effort by myself. I don't deserve any comment on this game. So I'll go straight to you with this. Latrell Mitchell out of Origin 3. Matt Burton to centres, and he'll move from 18th man. We saw with Damien Cook, it's not the best strategy to have a strictly just a hooker as your 14. You kind of need that versatility. Does Drinkwater, Scotty Drinkwater, who's been in fine form, does he factor in for you in that 14 role? Do you rate it or hate it?
Drinkwater's you probably got to be a star in the competition for longer to kind of earn your way into Origin. But the thing about Drinkwater's game is that he can set up a try. Like, he's got the passing game, which is what Reece Walsh has, the threat, with his feet and with the pass, as does Kalen Ponga. And that's kind of been lacking with Teddy. And Teddy's not even necessarily breaking as many tackles or cleanly beating players with his feet like he used to be able to either. Next in line, next person that deserves an opportunity is Dylan Edwards. But you do kind of run into the same issue. And you've said this before, Edwards plays the game similar to Teddy, where he doesn't have the ball playing. If, Drinky goes on the same trajectory, you look at the Cowboys, they beat the Melbourne Storm, the Penrith Panthers, and the South Sydney Rabbitohs in 3 weeks. Now, I know you got Penrith on a origin depleted week, but Cowboys were origin depleted as well. So what a hell of a resurgence by the Cowboys. So if they go on a finals campaign and they go prelim or something, or one better, next year, Drinkwater's got to be in the conversation because nobody's job could be secure. Interesting point you make there, like Burton to left center. To me, it's like, how many more players have to get injured for them to actually pick Campbell Graham? I thought Campbell Graham surely will get a spot in game 3, but you could go Burton left center. I feel like Crichton's got to be their right center. But I want to stick strictly to NRL because it'd be so easy to digress into more origin chat, but we'll leave it for another day. Going back to the previous game, so the Titans hang on a win, taking a penalty goal late, which gets them to 18 points. But as we said before, the mixed matchup, we had 20 on the board with the Dolphins. So we win one we absolutely had no right to win, $2.30. That's great. It does mean if you equally staked the best bets in the mixed matchup this weekend, you actually came a few dollars ahead. But I know some people may do that, some may not. I'm still never happy with a 1-2 record on best bets. And I didn't deserve to win it, the Dolphins or Broncos ones clearly. But then we had a winning best bet here with the Cowboys plus 9.5. In fact, and they win the game by 25. Who would have thought? Not me for sure. I thought they could just get to Sydney and make it a competitive game. And I also thought there's a fair chance Murray might not back up. Well, he does back up. I feel like he wasn't quite 100% his damaging self, but he still played. And Taumalolo was pulled out with like a hamstring strain that nobody could have predicted. So the personnel news did not go our way in this one. But it didn't matter. I mean, it's a very tight game. It was another really low-scoring game with the Cowboys scoring late in the half and then adding a field goal. So it was a 5-0 peculiar, halftime score. But then a couple of quick-fire tries by the Cowboys in the second half. You realise that Souths weren't coming back from it. Clearly, no Latrell. It's not quite the same team. But, Walker was back from his calf injury. You've still got Cookie there, AJ, you've got Murray, who I mentioned, but Souths just, seemed off the pace. And the Cowboys, you could see how much it meant to them this game to really back up, the recent results and just the exact polar opposite of last time the Cowboys went to Sydney, which I think was the, the Cronulla Sharks game where they got pumped. You could tell that the Cowboys had that eye of the tiger, that they were going to come in and get the 2 points. And in the end, that they, pull away and make it a bit of a laugher, really. So definitely a score no one could have seen coming, but very glad on my behalf that, we stopped the rot and got a best bet winner there.
And to wrap this one up, I think the Bunnies are 1 out of 5 in their recent games. It's not looking as good as it has at the start of this year for them. And they're going to be without Latrell till round 21. So the Bunnies really need to make sure they do not slip out of that top 4. Because what does history tell us? If you don't finish in the top 4, you don't win a premiership. It's as simple as that. They've had a great start to the year, but they've got to turn this around quick. Just quietly, and this is just to add to my embarrassment even more. When Jason Taumalolo was ruled out, I thought, all right, I've got Winnie here. Rabbitohs are 13 plus. Without JT, they're going to struggle here. And yeah, it just adds to the insult. Todd Payton pregame, they said to him, the cliche, what was your message in the sheds? And he looked down the camera and he goes, it was a very particular one. We've got a very particular game plan we need to execute. And at that point, I started to feel nervous. I was like, oh, he seems confident. And rightfully, I should have been nervous with my horrible tip in this one.
But you were right. The Souths quietly, Souths have lost 4 of their last 5. Wow. And if people didn't hear the news about Latrell, because I don't think people realize the severity, they're not expecting him back till round 21 now. So completely take your point that, Souths need to be careful or the top 4 may get a little bit away from them. As other sides that were around the middle got wins this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know who they're versing in rounds 18, 19, 20. If they got buys, I'm not sure exactly. But
I think Souths have got Warriors next week, I believe.
In New Zealand. It's a sellout.
So it's like, you're getting, a team that's just, playing their best footy of the year and you're really struggling. So I mean, I'm sure as it stands right now, Souths are probably, a short favourite, but a lot of people could probably argue that the wrong team is favoured there. So I'll bring it up just now out of interest. But you can lead us into the next game. But be interesting to see if that does get action by Wednesday.
It will be. It was almost as interesting that stat Kyle's brought up on the screen there. Raiders are ahead of Power on the ladder by 2 points, despite having a minus 201 worst points differential. And we're about to talk about that side, the Raiders, because they just won 20-18. My MVP was big, red in the middle with 51 tackles. And for the Raiders, it's another close victory. That's why their points differential does not look pretty. But the facts are, with the way this ladder is, it could get to a point where other teams hit the same points on the ladder as them, and that's where Raiders could drop out of the top 8 if they're not careful. But for now, you have to say they're winning, and that's all that matters. Ultimately, for the Roosters, and I've said this for the last few games, they've lost. The Dragons won this game, and even their most recent victory, I can't remember who it was over, sorry, but I said I was unimpressed. And I would say the same here, even if they won. Unimpressive, just looking at their squad. I think it probably is time to trial Joey Manu at fullback and Teddy at 5'8". I know that sounds crazy, but at this point of their season, it's slowly slipping away. Manu averaged something like 300 meters in the World Cup there. He was clearly their most or their best attacking weapon throughout this whole 80, whereas Teddy was just kind of just providing consistent runs, but they weren't effective like Dylan Edwards or Chance Klukstar when they take those sort of consistent runs. So that leaves the halves pairing of Teddy and Keary. I don't know if I love that, so I'm not sure they'll go down that route. But for the Raiders, they were underdogs in this one, so you got to respect the victory, absolutely. And yeah, like even when they went on that win streak where they had 5 or 6 in a row, they were all relatively tight victories, most of them. And that's what they seem to be continuing here in their bounce back from what was a really disappointing game in their last one to this. Of course, Jared Croker's 300th at GIO Stadium. But yeah, they had a horrible record at Allianz winning. I think they'd won 1 out of their last 8 there or something. They got to win as underdogs, so you got to respect that. For the Roosters, I'm not sure if you can respect that effort. It was unimpressive again. But how did you see that one?
Yeah, this annoyed me because last time I bet on a Roosters game, it was against the Roosters, and they did not impress me at all against Newcastle, other than like fighting hard. But that, like as I said on the recap last week, how they won that game, they really stole it, and it said a lot about Newcastle's ineptitude and inability to take chances. And last time I was on the Raiders, I was really confident that they were going to win, and that it was a big milestone game, and they were at home, and they totally messed the bed. And here they are now; they're getting an underdog win, and this was another game that was really close to making a best bet. To get Raiders plus 4.5, even though they could have lost this. 4.5, you would have felt so confident basically throughout this game. And the Raiders did lead at one stage 18-0. And the Roosters made the Raiders nervous. I've never felt like the Roosters really deserved it. Roosters got a penalty right at the end of the first half, which just gave them one final set to attack down 18-0. And they did score through that man, Joey Manu, which I felt was massive. I felt like Roosters were no chance 18-0 down. But 18-6 had a chance. And then Joey Manu skies for a bomb and shows his real athletic prowess. And it's 18-12. I know that the Raiders add a penalty and keep the Roosters out for the majority of the second half, although the Roosters did score with about 4 or 5 minutes to go to give us a grandstand finish. But yeah, I'm disappointed that I should have been on the Raiders with the start. But I guess before the game, Nat Butcher was ruled out. During the game, who did the Roosters lose? Egan Butcher at one point to HIA. Can't
Jake
recall if
Turpin.
anyone else in it. Yes, and in fairness, the Raiders lost Papali'i to a muscle strain very early in the contest as well. So no real need to make excuses for the Roosters. That they let themselves fall behind again. And yeah, we could probably talk about Teddy all day as well. There's comments coming in. He doesn't have the same athleticism and runs around in circles. So I don't know. He's not a natural 5'8" either. But you got me thinking you could just swap Manu and Teddy. Could Teddy play right center? Like he doesn't need to touch the ball as much. When he touches it, he can just run it hard. Like take a bit more of the responsibilities out of Teddy's hands, where he's not expected to create something every time he touches because he's trying. You can never fault his effort and his work rate. But getting back to my point, he does not beat people like he used to, and he's never been like an elite ball player. But they look into him like they need that from him. Whereas Manu in the last couple of weeks has come alive again and is more threatening. And the only criticism you'd have had of the Roosters today was Manu needed to get more touches. So the Roosters, that they're going to struggle. Games like today, we did say on Wednesday, whenever the Raiders win, it's never by a big margin. So that continued. These are the kind of games that might decide who makes and misses the top 8. So big rebound for the Raiders, which, I wish I'd seen coming, off such a disappointing loss 2 weeks ago and a bye, coming in to Allianz and getting the job done here.
Yeah, the wound from that disappointing loss definitely didn't fester, as I said I can't remember. Maybe it was Ryan, actually. Ryan had said it in the preview show. But yeah, for Teddy, the only reason I offer 5/8 was I saw this fella on Instagram, and he is very heavily into the schoolboy scene. He's a very good coach at that level, and he said James Tedesco is the best 5/8 schoolboy he's ever seen. So that could be something. But the Teddy in his prime does not take 18 runs for 200 meters with 0 attacking stats. Only 4 errors to show for it. He just doesn't do that. And I saw a comment there from James saying maybe he can play wing. I could see a world where the Roosters get Roger Tuivasa-Sheck back to play fullback and put Teddy on the wing. It just seems like a Roosters thing to do. But yeah, of course, that's just pure speculation at this stage. Ryan, I am Mr. Fester. Well, he festered that win there when he
Uncle
got
Fester.
a beauty there. Uncle Fester, mate. Well done.
Now, there
Ryan.
was a story about RTS that the Warriors put in a query to the NRL, like what is his market value? What would we have to pay him? And the NRL's come back and said it's at least $600K a year. And the sticking point, like if you pro rata it out to what they'd have to pay him, the sticking point seemed to be that they think it will take like 4 to 6 to 8 weeks of training to get him up to speed to play finals. And they kind of think it's not worth the money because you have to pay him as soon as he's coming into the facility. So that was what I heard. I think it must have been on 360 one of the nights this week. But it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like RTS is such a class player that once he's in the building, he could be on the field for you a week or two later. If you think the money's a bit too much, just wait. You don't have to sign someone till first week of August is the deadline. So I'd much rather see him go to the Warriors.
And sorry, but even so, the NRL pay, like the NRL, you get paid by the NRL, not the club. You just tell the NRL how you're spending it through your cap. So if you've got the money there as a club, why not spend it on Roger Tuivasa-Sheck? Am I crazy for saying that? I don't think I am. And yeah, ultimately, I want him back as soon as possible. But that's some good points there, I suppose. If he does genuinely need time to transition from a center back to a fullback or a wing, maybe, but I don't know.
Because then you mentioned the Roosters, they've got Swali, out at least maybe one more week, unless he was to get an early release rugby, and then you could see some money be freed up. But what's the point of going to the Roosters? Are they even going to make the finals? At this point, it's not looking great because the Raiders look pretty secure there because they have been able to win a lot of these close games, and of course the Cowboys, earlier this afternoon. Not everybody fits, that's for sure. When you look at the top 8, even your team is not out of the hunt. So it's it's a competitive race, and this weekend definitely made me have to reevaluate some teams and start to wonder if we're at the point of the year where some teams are starting to lose hope while others are really starting to click, and whether we will see some bigger margins of victory later in the year, where I felt like earlier this year there were a lot more close games. That's what's on my mind as I go back into the lab. And obviously I need to up my game as well and get us back on track with a winning weekend of best bets.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's going to be an exciting end to the season with, like you said, teams streaking and surging with momentum, others playing for something else potentially. But yeah, it does make for some good potential best bets to finish off the season. That's for damn sure. But it's at that point where we have recapped everything we can for round 17 of the NRL season. We want to say thank you very much to all our live viewers. We always appreciate you guys being here. And if you're listening to this later as a podcast, we appreciate you also. We'll be back next Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. to preview round 18 and hand out all of our best bets. And we look forward to seeing you there also. So thank you very much.
Lego.